Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here with you all and to share how you can really start to explore deeper what you truly desire in your relationship and how you can bring it into being no matter what stage your relationship is in. So, whether you're dating or you're married or you're wanting to be either of those, this is going to help you really move from that place of analysis and criticism and frustration to feeling a sense of freedom, to feeling a sense of truly being loved and giving love, and really clarity on what it is you desire and what that looks like, and letting go of all the comparison that happens when it comes to life and in particular relationships. So say hello, join me, ask questions as we go. And of course, if you watch this on the replay, add your questions and comments, and I'll be sure to come back and visit this. So for me, I had always desired to be in a relationship, and at some level, deep in the back of the roots of my soul, there was a lot of fear around what that looked like. And so part of it, I hadn't had any positive relationship role models. My mother and father divorced before I was born, and my mother, kind of dated on and off, and then married my stepdad, and they had a somewhat up and down relationship. My stepdad was pretty. I mean, he was bipolar, so he would, go through phases of being really loving and other phases where he'd be really angry. And I knew I didn't want that. But what I did want, I wasn't even sure. I just knew it wasn't anything I had seen before. And so I wasn't even sure, did this even exist? And, not having a father really in my life, I definitely longed to have that man in my life, a man who loved me, who saw me, who heard me, who really wanted to understand me, who was interested in my life and my desires and wanted to be a part of my life, because that was something I didn't experience at all from my father. And unconsciously, of course, not having experienced that, though I desired to experience that, I ended up attracting men in my life who didn't give me that experience, because there was a fear around whether I was really deserving of that, whether that was really possible for me. So I attracted a lot of unavailable men, unavailable emotionally, sometimes physically, like distance wise, men in different countries, men in different cities, and even men at different levels of unavailability as far as, being in other relationships. So really, setting myself up for disappointment over and over and over again, and heartbreak over and over again, of course, to prove the lie that had taken a hold of me as a child, that I wasn't worthy and deserving of true, reciprocal, healthy love and a relationship that was sustainable and lasting and evolving. So through this journey of mine and having experienced different really, dysfunctional and sometimes destructive relationships, it definitely set me on the path to healing, because I knew I didn't want to be alone. I wanted to share my life with someone. And I didn't also want to just share my life with someone. I wanted to share my life with someone who valued me and honored me, and who I valued and honored. So it wasn't just coming from a place of not wanting to be alone. It was wanting to be with the right person. And of course, having been with a lot of the wrong men, I came to the, realization that I had to do some deeper healing to uncover what was true for me. And so that's what I want to share with you is how you can start to shift how you see yourself, let go of all the comparisons and all the masks that you might have worn or still be wearing, of trying to be someone you're not in order to be in a relationship, or feel like you have to be someone else to be in a relationship. And then how you can really step into creating a new story, a story of a loving, healthy, passionate, long term, fully committed relationship. So, so the first part really was, like I mentioned, often what happens is we have an event in childhood and a belief gets implanted in our brains. And as children, we don't know any better. So we're trying to make sense of the world, and we're making sense of the world from a very limited perspective because we're in a very limited environment with our families. And it's easy for a lie to get rooted and to just get deeper and deeper embedded so you don't even know it's a lie anymore. And you start to live your life from this false belief. So for me, the false belief was it wasn't safe to be happy, and I didn't maybe deserve to be in a happy relationship, and maybe happy relationships didn't really exist. So it was safer for me to be independent and to make sure I could take care of myself and be, a high achiever and, accomplish all kinds of things and kind of dismiss this desire of wanting to be met on the same page. And instead of, having to prove myself, of being able to be who I truly was and be loved for who I truly was. And so as I began to do this work in healing this and uncovering this and really clarifying my true desire, it's being able to get to that core lie, that core belief, and begin to pull it out. I mean, it's like pulling out, like if you walk into a cactus, all the tiny little stickers that have embedded into you when you walk by. And it's the same thing. It's like that one lie then has all these offshoots of lies. And so it's going deep and picking out all the lies and exposing them to the truth. And how this worked for me, and what I want to share with you, is exposing it to the truth of who God says I am, because that's the total truth. There is no other greater truth than who God says you are, because you are made in his image. So as I began to really start to see myself as God saw me versus how I saw me, because how I saw me was I had to prove, I had to, hide what I really wanted, who I really was, suppress, even my voice and my desires. And I had to achieve. And, when it came to men, it was I had to contort my body. I had to be thinner and fitter and sexier and more beautiful and more people pleasing, and almost like morphed myself a lot of times into their ideal girlfriend, even though they weren't my ideal boyfriend. So, and of course, how this manifested in negative ways was, led to a lot of this like inner conflict. And a lot of times I chose to deal with that inner conflict through leaning on alcohol, other times leaning on, sweets and emotional eating, other times just busyness, just keeping myself so busy that I didn't have time to deal with it. So taking on different house projects, taking on, working more, or getting involved in different social activities, and just keeping myself so busy that I didn't have time to really explore what it was I truly desired and where that discontent was coming from not having met those desires. And that's how I saw me. And so when I learned and to go deeper, and part of this deeper healing requires a lot of forgiveness of yourself, forgiveness of the people who you witnessed, who helped shape you, who also helped shape the false beliefs and the lies that it got embedded in you, because you start to see they didn't know any better, of course, and they didn't have the presence or capacity maybe to sit with you and explore with you, and to really tune into what you were experiencing to help show you the truth. Unfortunately, a lot of times they're not available for that. So forgiveness also of all the men who I had been with who hadn't been the right men, but had, at various points mistreated me, sometimes cheated on me, lied to me, manipulated me, and letting go of all that anger and bitterness and feeling, like the victim, right? And letting all of that go, and not condoning their behavior, but no longer holding anger and resentment towards them, because that just gives them power over me. So being able to truly forgive them so I could release them from my life because they don't need to have any part of my life anymore. And forgiving myself for being with them in the first place, being open to something like that, and stooping so low and feeling so low about myself, and thinking so little of myself that I was open to that kind of treatment. And as I continued to do this, what happened was God showed up even more, and my relationship with Him strengthened because I didn't have a relationship with God. I was really, really distrustful of God because I had a difficult relationship with my father. So thinking of God as father was really challenging for me because my father wasn't there for me. My father didn't care for me, wasn't interested in me, didn't invest in, in knowing me and showing me love. So how was I supposed to reconcile that God is supposed to be a father? So I started to see, of course, my misguided beliefs around thinking of God as a human. So of course, He's not a human. God is, supreme being. So He doesn't have those those partialities that humans have. He doesn't play favorites like humans do. He doesn't have a limit on His love as sometimes humans do. And as I began to really reconcile this and go deeper, and strengthen my relationship with God, I began to explore more of who God was. And that began to heal how I saw myself, because I began to see God is not human. God is impartial, and He has an everlasting love for us and deep forgiveness for us. And if He's able to forgive me, well, I can forgive myself as well, because of course, who am I to judge myself? Who am I to think I'm a better judge of myself than God who created me, right? So as I began to do this work, then I began to see myself differently. And of course, once you begin to see yourself as God sees you, everything begins to change. I mean, I had more confidence, I had more clarity in what I truly desired. I was no longer available for all the unavailable men. I was able to really sit with myself and sit with those uncomfortable emotions instead of seeking out alcohol and sweets and overeating, and really just be okay in the discomfort and the discontent and even in the grieving, and allowing all of it to come through and honoring it so it could be released. So then I could really explore, you know, what is it that I have placed as conditions for me to be happy when it comes to relationships. And I began to see I, of course, needed to be the person that I was seeking, that I had to let go of seeking this person, this man, as Hollywood and as society says, to complete me, and began to see I was complete already. Of course, I'm complete already. God created me complete and perfect. And as I began to really own that, then I began to open myself up to something completely different in terms of relationship. So that was the first process, is really beginning to see myself with heart vision. And then the next phase of the healing and transformation was then being willing to strip off all the masks, that I didn't have to be this uber successful, super sexy, super fit, super woman in order to have a man. I could take off all those masks and begin to see I can be loved for who I am. And this, of course, allowed me to really reclaim my voice and stop being the people pleaser and create clear boundaries and claim what it is that I desire, to know that, of course, I am worthy of that. And how this has manifested for my clients I worked with. One of my clients really was struggling not only in her relationships, but also in her business, and struggled with just how she saw herself and her belief in herself and even her confidence, even though she had successes in her business and had successes on and off in different relationships. But as we began to work together, we started to see this pattern of relationships of her feeling like she had to, kind of take control and be in charge. And as we followed the path to see the origin of this behavior, because it's coming from a belief and the belief is coming from a moment in time, she began to see how, she had seen her father never really be around and her mother always kind of picking up and taking over. And so she learned as a young age that she had to take care of herself and she had to do everything on her own. So, of course, in her relationships with men, she attracted men who didn't really want to do anything and she had to take over and do everything on her own. And this was also, manifesting in her relationships with her family, where her family took advantage of her a lot and she didn't have really clear boundaries and really didn't treat her with respect. And so, as we begin to uncover this belief, then she was able to explore, what did that defining moment equip her with? How did it create in her certain gifts that wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for that event? And she began to see that really what happened from that core defining moment was she began to develop in herself an ability to really tune into relationship dynamics where she could walk into a room and identify right away how the relationships were playing out between all the people. And this actually is what gave her such power in her consulting business, is that she could walk into a company and instantly see what relationship dynamics were in place between different leaders and different coworkers and different groups, and then how to go in to adjust them to bring them into some sense of balance so that they could operate at a higher level, they could perform at higher levels, they could create higher profits, they could create higher employee retention. And she hadn't made this connection before because it was something that came so naturally for her that she dismissed it. But as she began to really own this as her unique gifts and how her upbringing is what allowed her to have those gifts, she was able to forgive her father and her mother and herself and all the men that she had been with in her family, and really begin to strengthen her belief in herself and establish clear boundaries with her family, and really begin to see not only who she was and the value of just inherent in her, also in the gifts that she was here to serve, and how she could use those gifts to help others. And what happened was she completely transformed her relationship with her family, had courageous conversations. They began treating her differently because she was treating herself differently. She began treating herself with much more respect. And at the same time, people began reaching out, wanting to work with her. And this was after, she had been months with nothing. And that's how powerful this work is that internal work has direct external impact. You start to see the shifts in your external world because of this work that you're doing on the inside, of stripping away the masks, of stripping away of all the scripts that you have of how you're meant to live, and seeing yourself from that higher perspective, from that heart vision, from how God sees you. And in relationships, how this transformed my relationship for me was stripping off the mask just relieved the pressure on my relationship, where I felt like I could truly be myself and I could be loved for being truly myself. And of course, that allowed me to give love in such greater capacity than ever before, as I was able to start to see, my boyfriend from that higher perspective as well, and appreciate him for who he was, instead of criticizing him for who he wasn't, which had been my pattern, unfortunately, previously. So then the next phase of this evolution of growth and transformation was then, of course, having taken off all the masks, having learned to see yourself from heart vision, you're stepping into the ability to create a new story. So that old story from childhood of not being deserving of love and happiness, of having to take control and be in charge, whatever it might be for you, you're able to step into a completely new story of course, you're capable and able to receive great love, and you don't have to take control and be in charge of everything, and you can allow yourself to really truly be yourself. And as you do, you gain this inner security that is magnetic and attractive, because you're no longer hinging your worth and your value and your sense of self on anything outside of you. It doesn't depend on the status of your relationship, whether you're fighting or you're not, or whether you're alone or whether you're not, or the status of your accomplishments or education, or the appearance of your body, if you're overweight or underweight or not sexy or sexy. It comes from such a deeper place, because it comes from who God created you to be and who God says you are, which no man can take away from you and no circumstance can change. And that is the best place to start a new story, from great inner security, from great inner confidence, from a great sense of truth of who you are. And as I stepped into this new story, my boyfriend, now husband, we went from, bickering and criticizing and just a lot of conflict in our relationship, to connecting deeper than we ever had before, to having amazing, really meaningful conversations about life and what we desired, and even just our values. We began having more fun. We began having greater intimacy and passion. And I was truly amazed at how my capacity for love just continued to increase, and to receive love continued to increase. And, for one of my clients who I worked with in this, she came to me and had this kind of misguided view of herself in comparison to her husband, where she had put him on a pedestal and kind of elevated him and his work. And you could see it in the way she talked, that it also diminished herself and her work in the way she talked about him, that he was doing something great and he was something to be celebrated, but she wasn't. And as we began to explore, where did this come from? She began to see that she had this belief of, kind of hiding and coming from a place of being a little bit, it's similar to the previous client, of feeling like she had to be in control and take charge. And in order to do so, she kind of had to boost others and kind of put herself down. So it's kind of that people pleaser mentality. And as we began to explore this, she began to see, her father wasn't around at all. And so in order to kind of alleviate that situation, she began the, kind of caretaker, doing everything, making sure everyone was okay, taking charge. And of course, that was the same way she ended up being in relationships, that she had to take charge, but at the same time was operating out of a place of fear, because there was this core belief that he was going to leave, because that was what happened in her childhood, that her father left. And it really prevented her from having a greater experience of joy, of freedom, of security, of really greater love, because there's always this holding back, because what if he leaves? And as we began to explore this, she began to rewrite that story and see it had equipped her with this intense curiosity for human behavior, and led her on this path to study psychology and really delve into what drove people in their patterns in life, and how sometimes those patterns, of course, ended up in destructive behaviors. And so she began to honor what she had been through, and how that situation had given her these amazing gifts and skills and abilities. And in that, really, of course, learning to forgive herself, or learning to forgive her father, learning to forgive, a lot of people in her past who had also left her, and kind of reconfirmed this lie that she would be left. And as she began to do that and heal that, she began to start to trust her boyfriend more and allow herself to be taken care of. She began to have the ability to be more spontaneous instead of having to be in control all the time, and go on, new adventures, and have new experiences that she'd never had before. And in doing so, she began to experience greater joy and greater trust and greater freedom while also feeling more secure in who she was, regardless of what happened to the relationship. So, this is super powerful work, and it really opens you up to move to that place of feeling really free instead of frustrated in your relationship, and in really creating intimacy instead of having this coming from this place of conflict, not only internal conflict, but also conflict with your partner, and really coming to a place of clarity about what you desire instead of confusion and second guessing and analyzing and critiquing your relationship. And then, of course, coming from that place of feeling kind of lost and unsure and wondering if you're ever going to have the relationship you truly desire, to feeling truly deeply loved and expressing love and experiencing love in ways that you never thought possible. And that is what is possible for every one of us. So it really is an amazing journey of healing, of transformation, of learning to see yourself with heart vision, to strip off the mask, and to step into and create a new story, a story that allows you to have the relationship you truly desire. In that relationship, when you're in that relationship that you truly desire, you really are operating from such a different place, from a place of such genuine peace that informs every area of your life, where you start to operate in your work, in your business, from a place of security and freedom and peace. And in your other family or friends or work relationships, there is no longer that comparison and confusion or analyzing or critiquing. It's really coming from a place of love and appreciation and curiosity, and how you treat yourself starts to change. You begin to show yourself more love in how you eat and how you move, and the kinds of information that you're willing to put into your mind, and the kinds of relationships you're willing to have in your life. So our core desire at the core of all of us is to be in relationship, and having that relationship be one of joy, of freedom, of security, of truth, and being the person you truly are helps every area of your life completely shift. Whereas I told you, like for my clients, their business completely transformed, their family relationships transformed, their bodies transformed. They began having greater health and energy and creativity, experiencing, not only new activities and new adventures, but also new opportunities opening up to them, because they're operating from a place of truth and from a place of love that is a love that doesn't change no matter what's going on. So I would love to hear your thoughts and your questions. And I invite you to reach out to me and explore what it would look like for you to truly discover you can have the relationship you desire, and to learn how you can bring it into being so you can experience that sense of freedom and security and joy and true deep love. So it's a 3-month one-on-one mentorship where we will explore what I shared today. What are the beliefs that are motivating your behavior that is leading to a little bit of dysfunction and, of course, discontent in your relationship, and then how we can start to really begin to honor that and do some forgiveness around that story, so that you can release it and step into a new story, and see the gifts from that, and begin to take off the mask and see yourself from heart vision, and honor everything that you've been through and all of who you are and all that you desire, and know that everything that you desire in a relationship is possible, even way beyond what you desire is possible for you. And that's exactly what we'll do in this 90-day one-on-one mentorship, where we will meet every week, and you'll be receiving support throughout the week with different resources and integrations and different opportunities for reflection that will really start to seal in this transformation and healing. And that is an investment of $24.97, and I also offer a payment plan, so it's definitely accessible for all of you. All right, I will put a link where you can contact me. We can have a quick call to see if this is a good fit for you, and then we can get started. All right. Hoping you are having an amazing day and letting you know that your true heart desire in your relationship is just waiting for you. It's possible, and it's inscribed in your DNA, and it's just ready to be revealed. So let's make that happen together. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll talk to you soon.